Well, before we started the fund, I started the fund actually while I was at Rothschild. It was called Rothschild Recovery Fund. And the reason I went off on my own was they brought in a new CEO that I was totally incompatible with. So we worked it out. I had decided that the private equity business was a better business than the advisory business. And so I had decided I didn't want to keep doing both. I was doing the global restructuring for the Rothschild Group and running this then small fund. So I worked out a deal with them where I wouldn't keep competing with them for advisory clients, but they would sell me the fund. And we had a little negotiation about that because I wanted to buy it at their original cost, not at the appreciated cost, and that's what finally happened. But anyhow, so we got to the steel industry because we had advised the unsecured creditors in LTV's first bankruptcy. This was their second, and as it turned out, final bankruptcy. So I knew the steel company that they had, and I knew all of LTV pretty well. And it was horrifying to me that all the recommendations that we made, what they should do post-bankruptcy, they didn't do a single thing. They didn't change anything. They just converted some debt to equity and ran it in the same bad way that they had. So this time when it went bankrupt, the mills were put on what's called hot idle, namely a little bit of molten steel going through the process so that the refractory bricks didn't implode. Because if they did implode, it would be a monumental task to rebuild it. So the creditors were spending $1 million a week to keep it on hot idle. So they put it up for sale. And I figured that we could get it cheaply enough, but we had to solve the problem of the union agreement because they had very tough labor contract. Everybody on the premises was a steel worker. Even if you were a clerk, even if you were the little old person who cleaned the latrine, everybody had to be a card-carrying steel worker. So that made it pretty expensive. And they had 32 job classifications. Job classifications were very, very specific. You could only pick up a red shovel. He could only pick up a white shovel. They were practically that tough. So I went out to see Leo Gerard, who was then the head of the steelworkers, and said, Leo, we'll buy it. We'll put up the capital. We'll start the mills again and hire back some of the workers that had been laid off because it was a big facility. We worked it out, so we went from 32 job classifications to 5, and the only people who were hard carrying were the people who had something to do with steel. We didn't disturb wages at all. We redefined overtime a little bit to make it a little less restrictive. And the quid pro quo was agreed to give productivity bonuses to all the workers. I'm a big believer in productivity bonuses for blue-collar workers, not piecework, not requiring them to do, but if they can hit a target, they get a bonus regardless whether the company's making money or not. He was a little skeptical of that part, saying, oh, you're never really going to pay it. Anyhow, we worked it out, and we made the deal at an Italian restaurant on a big hill overlooking Pittsburgh, and we wrote it out on a series of napkins. So that was my official deal with the steel workers, and Wilbur, was on these napkins. Then comes the bidding. And in the bidding, we ended up paying $90 million for assets in which they had invested $2.5 billion in the prior 5 years. So we didn't have very much capital cost. And then we bought $1 billion of receivables and inventory for half that. So we had a very low cost base, and it worked out fine.